be in the section on the Wisconsin Uprising and the Wisconsin workers' struggle, but for some reason we've been put into public sector unionism. So we should start off by saying the Teaching Assistants Association at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is indeed a public sector union. It's the first of its kind. It was the first graduate student union in the country. 69, right? 68, 69 is when it got started. So it is a public sector union. So that is probably why we are in this section. So we'll talk today about the Wisconsin struggle. We'll talk kind of give you a lot of backstory and kind of some details starting out leading up to the occupation of the Wisconsin state capitol, which lasted almost 3 weeks. But we'll specifically talk about the role of the Teaching Assistants Association, or the TAA, in that struggle. So when the attack by Scott Walker began, the TAA had already been on the defense. We knew that budget cuts were going to come, the budget cuts for the UW system, and especially UW-Madison. There was a special legislation that they were going to do to already cut the contracts of public sector workers like us, even before the budget repair bill was introduced. There was talk about putting in what they called flexibilities into the UW system, meaning further privatization of our public education system. And splitting UW-Madison from the rest of the University of Wisconsin system, which would be a huge change in Wisconsin and which would really threaten the quality of education in the entire state as a whole. So they were trying to pull the flagship university in Madison away from that. So all these things were happening. We knew budget cuts were coming in a big way, so we were already preparing, and we had planned an event for that Valentine's Day, which we'll get into in a few minutes. So we had already planned that. The Thursday before Valentine's Day, we had caught word that Walker was going to introduce the bill the next following morning. So Thursday night started with swarms of phone calls between us, figuring out what we do from here, where to start, etc., etc. The next morning, Friday, the day he was going to introduce the budget repair bill, that is when we all heard that Mubarak in Egypt had stepped down. Huge feeling of exuberance and possibility, right? Possibility for change. In that morning, there had already been a labor and working class studies project planned with many local labor leaders of Madison and labor leaders from around the state, leaders in studying labor at the university, a lot of student activists like ourselves. All of us had attended this meeting, which had already been planned, and that kind of acted as a starting point to get everybody worked up and going. The strike word was flying everywhere that day. People were outraged. People were pissed. People were ready to fight. And that morning, that meeting kind of gave an impetus to the weekend and the following struggle. So what we did over the weekend to prepare is really try to get the word out. We did a lot of phone banking to different parts of Wisconsin. We did door knocking, so we went to Republican districts of Wisconsin and tried to talk to constituents in order to try to flip the vote, right? But also to spread the word, because this was happening fast. It was a radical break from Wisconsin tradition of public unionism and workers' rights, and even people who don't support unions, even people who voted for Scott Walker, were shocked by this move because it was so radical. And like if you heard Laura Drescher's talk this morning, it was introduced on Friday morning. They were trying to pass it by Wednesday evening. So we went to Republican districts and we talked to people about, this is a radical break. He's doing this without any type of public hearing, no debate, no public discussion. This is very problematic, even if you don't support unions, even if you understand that there needs to be some budget cuts. This is a radical break in the Wisconsin tradition and a real attack on workers' rights. So over the weekend, we built up this outrage, we built up this public awareness. So by Monday, inboxes and voicemails had filled up. They had to stop, the the offices, especially the Republican senators, had to actually cut their phone lines. They had to turn their phones off. They stopped taking emails because it was so overwhelming. So this then led to them opening a public hearing on Tuesday morning. But stepping back for a second, on Monday, Valentine's Day, is when we had already had the event planned. So about 1,000 or so of us students and community members all marched from the university to the Capitol to deliver thousands upon thousands of Valentine's Day cards to Walker. So we dumped them all on his desk. There you go, it says, I heart UW. As you can see under that, it says, Walker, don't break our hearts. And so people had signed these from all over the place, sent them in. We dumped thousands of them on his desk. Of course, he wasn't available to accept them. So Tuesday morning, they granted us a public hearing. Monday, I should say that the TA had an emergency GM and general membership meeting. We had already started meeting with university administrators about what ramifications TAs would face if they encouraged their students to go to the Capitol and either witness democracy in action or to participate in the protests. So we were already planning and getting set for the long haul. So Tuesday morning, they opened up the public hearing. Thousands of people swarmed the Capitol. The basis of the public hearing is that each person who registers to speak gets 2 minutes to talk. So this we kept going the entire day. About 10 o'clock at night, the Republicans announced that they're going to cut off speakers lists now, and they are going to leave the building at 3 a.m. Thousands of people filled the hallway, screaming and chanting, "Let us speak." And because of the outrage, because of the show, the Democrats decided to keep the hearing going. And if you heard Laura this morning, she explained that keeping the hearing going is what provided the legitimacy for staying inside the Capitol and actually beginning the occupation. So that night, people stayed. We gave testimony throughout the night, 2 minutes by 2 minutes. And then that Wednesday morning, we woke up, sunshine, filling the Capitol Rotunda, and that was the first night of the occupation.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit now about the role of the Teaching Assistant Association. This is the union that represents graduate student workers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We represent teaching assistants, project assistants, research assistants, all different types of graduate student workers. So right, as Charity said, the occupation has started and it's very chaotic, and none of us were prepared for this. There was certainly talk about filibustering, like this public hearing, but this was a very short timeline. Things were happening more quickly than we could anticipate, and all of a sudden we had this surge of people in the Capitol. There was this pressure to keep the hearings going, and it evolved into a 2.5-week occupation. So one of the things that was pretty unique about our role in this occupation was that we had this space that we had reserved through the Capitol, 300 Northeast. This was the room that we had that day that we ended up having for about half of the occupation before they kicked us out. So this room, this space in the Capitol became what we call the Situation Room or the War Room, and it became kind of the headquarters for a lot of the organizing that happened there, and it kind of put the TAA at this very central spot, that did a lot of the organizing within the